that's what's funny. It's like I can look at what's going on in the world, what comes across in the media, and going, the more ridiculous and the more horror that comes through that messaging just indicates how close we are to coming as individuals to creating that life of peace.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Robert Patton Global Podcast. I'm here with Siri, Bahadur, and he's a Kundalini yoga instructor, I believe. That's do you have any other titles that you go by, or?
No. No. I try not to even have that one.
Right. Yeah. So how did you get started into that?
I was just at a time where it was kind of an, I guess best describe it as hippie phase, just young and, engaging in all that stuff, kind of freestyle and getting high when I could.
Yeah.
And then after a while that stopped feeling satisfying and more just like a rut.
Yeah. It can be stressful just chasing the high and like smoking weed every day for decades, or I find that I get more kind of anxiety when I smoke now than I get a sense of peace from it,
Yeah. Well, for me, I think it really brought into more conscious focus the closed cycle, the closed loop, and my behavior patterns within the time I was not smoking, and then after, and I'm going, but this is just like the same old, you know, and not that I knew to look for anything different, but I knew there had to be something else, and I happened to come across someone who practiced the yoga and had a different lifestyle than that, and I decided to try it out. So.
and you just followed that journey up to this point. How long ago was that?
Oh gosh, that probably started around 1973, something like that. When I started, went to first classes, and since then it's constantly changing. It's even changing now.
How so?
Well, just finding what's working and running with that, finding pieces that don't work, and just engaging in a process, hopefully to drop those, resolve them, let them go. And so, it's like the proverbial analogy of peeling the onion. You get the outside layer and you say, oh, well, finally there, until you find there's another, and another, and I would think something was gone until, my relating to an experience and really taking it as who I am, my experience, and just going, well, it just goes deeper than that, and it just keeps exposing its influence on how I think and how I perceive and how I act, and so, but it's fun. It's like once I grab a hold of the thread and start pulling it to see where it leads, it's always interesting and it's always unfolding. So.
It just reminded me of this old commercial that I used to watch when I was a kid, and it was like, how many bites does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop, and or how many licks or something, and then the owl would just like, and then you're at the center, and there's no quick way, I guess, unless there's substances you can take, and I've participated in all of that stuff. I've done pretty much everything that exists and experienced like tripping out, and I've left my body. I did DMT quite a few years ago, and the experience was transcendent, and in the sense that I saw myself leaving my body. I traveled through some dimensional tunnels. I ended up on the other side where there were these jokers, I would describe them as, jesters, if you will, and they were all drinking tea in a glass house, and there was like the sun was shining on the outside, there was green grass, and one of them just turned to me and looked, and he was like, shh. And from that, shushing me, I intuited that what he was saying was, we're here, it's all good, we have everything under control, you need to go back to your dimension and do the work you need to do there, and basically don't come back here, at least not in this with this substance.
Yeah. I think that's a common discovery. I have a friend that did the same thing. He used acid and got to the space, and he described to me at the time that I later found out was, he would see shimmering particles of creation, of the particles of creation, and he would tell me that I tripped and I saw God and was talking to him, and I said, wow, this is really cool. And he said, then God says, yeah, it is. And he said, well, I'd like to stay. And God says, well, you can't. You have to come back without using the substance.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's like part of the deal. What the drugstore is in here.
It really is. I practice a lot of non-traditional, like Wim Hof breathing, for instance. I was really getting into that a couple of years ago, and I still do it from time to time. But when you do those breathing exercises and exhale, hold, inhale, squeeze, I feel like I get these little bursts of what people would call DMT, and I'll get like a reset. If I'm super stressed out, it's really helpful because I'll wake up almost like where am I? And I like that. I want to just wipe my mind clean sometimes from all the thoughts of the repetitive thoughts, stresses, work and relationships, and just like life is full of sorrow and tragedy or whatever, and that's what we're trying to be cool with every day. I feel like every day is another battle, and so I wake up every morning now. I started doing transcendental meditation a couple years ago through the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi teachings, and I find such peace during those meditations. Not every time, because they say like take it as it comes, because sometimes you'll just sit there, and I do 20 minutes, so we'll talk about that in a second, actually, because I heard your conversation with Matt on Zen Archive, and I want to delve into that a little bit. But I do a mantra, but it's an internal mantra. I'm not saying it out loud, and I will just like sink into a space that is so blissful and peaceful. It carries me through the day. I mean, at least until like mid-afternoon, and then I do it again. And I've been doing that every day for the past year and a half or so. Mm-hmm. Twice a day. I've missed like 2 of my afternoon meditations because like just life happened, but I really make it a priority, and my wife is really cool with it, because I before that I would take naps every day, and that would be my like refreshment time. But now I don't take naps, and I meditate, and I have more energy and clarity and peace, and like less friction at home, because I'm in a better state of mind. You know, I'm not so easily irritated. But when I heard you talking to Matt, it seemed like you were saying like 20 minutes or whatever, you're just getting started type thing, right?
Yeah.
What is your daily practice?
Well, you know, it has shifted. You know, over time, I would, you know, I would do like the same 31-minute meditation every day.
Okay.
And now I have kind of a mixed bag. I have like a 20-minute or so prayer that I recite, that I get into the sound of it, and then
out loud. So you're saying it out loud?
Yeah, okay. Out loud or kind of whispering. It depends, you know,
okay.
on the situation. But out loud is good, because then it vibrates my structure, and that's what I'm looking for. And I've just started doing the 5 Tibetan rites practice, and that's pretty cool. You know,
from the Book of the Dead or something? Is that
no?
Okay,
no.
Sorry.
I think it's In Search of the Fountain of Youth.
Yes.
I'm
on that.
Yeah. I forget his name. Keldon, I think his name is. Anyway, you know, it's just a gradual process of building up to energize the chakras and synchronize them. And so you start out with 3 and add 2 a week until you get to 21, and then just keep that going. And so I started doing that because I don't know if there's any time to find the Fountain of Youth, you know, kind of like now.
Right.
And it's interesting, you know, it does build strength. You know, I went to my chiropractor, you know, and I'd been doing it maybe for a couple of visits, and he said, "Oh yeah, you're getting stronger." And I'm going, "Yeah, okay." I knew that.
Oh, you felt it. I'm reading this book called The Greatest Salesman Alive by Og Mandino right now, and it talks about there's 10 ancient scrolls of wisdom, and it's this tiny little book. It's kind of like The Alchemist. I don't know if you've read The Alchemist, but
I think so.
When you get to the the point in the story where the scrolls are revealed, now you just have the scrolls. And so the scrolls says, the first scroll talks about how you need to read this scroll every day, 3 times a day for 30 days, and then move on to the next scroll and repeat that until you've lived with each scroll for 30 days. So I'm still on the first scroll. I'm about 20 plus days in. And one of the times you read it's supposed to be the time at night, it says in the scroll, but I did it this morning, and as I was reading it, I was actually thinking about our podcast coming up, and I had listened to you, and then outward mantras, like vocal mantras, and so I'm reading it and I'm projecting my voice in a way where I'm feeling the vibration in my chest, and there was something to that which I had never really tried, because I do the internal mantra just in my head, right? And so there was something to that. And so you're repeating your mantra. You do the 21 different kind of sentences or something.
Yeah. It's it's like a song with 39 verses.
39 verses.
Yeah, and that it's funny. It's an interesting meditative experience, and it kind of gets into the space where, as you're creating that rolling of sound, it's like listening to the soundtrack of a movie, and it takes you through there, and getting involved in it, and at some point, you know, it just it kind of keeps progressing, but at other times you just kind of get lost in, and my mind just goes, blank.
Oh, nice.
Right. And so I realized where I was, and I start that particular verse over again and keep going. But that's the thing about meditation. At if you divide it up into segments, which will vary according to where you are at any given time, who's doing it, and what the meditation is. But you'll find that the first segment is your mind going, are we doing this again? You sure you really want to do this? It's like time is ticking. You got
time,
this, and that, right?
Yeah.
And then, but all of a sudden, without realizing it, you'll find that you're in the space where the mind just gave up trying to convince you to stay with it rather than let go into the practice of whatever it was. And so I found that coming into play with the 31-minute meditation, because somewhere in between, and I think it's around 22 minutes, that you actually get into the space where you're there. It's probably similar to your meditation that you're doing, to the transcendental meditation, that it doesn't matter the number of the minute you get there. It's just like, okay, I got there.
Yes, and it might be just be for an instant where you transcend, and then not typically, but every now and then it's like I'm doing it for 20 minutes, and then my little bell rings, and when the bell rings, you have 2 more minutes to kind of come out of it. You don't want to just like pop right out of a meditation and go, have a meeting or anything. You want to like slowly transition out, and so it's telling me my time is up, but that's right when I got in to the space. And so I want to let it last a little bit longer. So I'll just tell, I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're going to do this for a few more minutes. And but like part of my resistance, which I don't really have anymore, because I think to myself, I used to sleep in the middle of the day, every day, since I was like 20. I'm 46. I just turned 46. And I used to go out to my car when I worked at a corporate office, and I would take a nap. And I did it, and when I was in the Army and afterwards. And so I'm telling myself, to justify the time that I'm spending doing this, that if I'm not doing this, I'm going to be sleeping. And this, to me, I find to be more restorative. But like you said, like the clock is ticking. I got stuff to do, and I'm up here with my eyes closed, saying this word in my head over and over again. But I think probably the ancients figured something out along the way that was beneficial, and I really love it, and it's my time for me to just be, instead of doing all the time, be. And if I do have thoughts, I try to have a notepad around, because that's when all the stuff comes up that you need to do. It's like, oh, I need to do this and this. So I just write them down so that I can get back into the meditation, and then I can refer to that list when I'm done, which I find very helpful. I don't know, because otherwise you can just get stuck thinking about that thing you need to do. Do you have that?
Oh yeah. But what I find interesting what you said, and just the response, it's like when you say, well, either the bell rings and it feels like you just got into that space, and the idea occurs that no, you got into that space well before the bell rang.
Oh yeah.
But since it's beyond mind and beyond time, it just seems like you just got there. But and part of you is always there, which is how you get there. Right?
Yeah, but like it's a loose grasp, I think. It's kind of like you're tethered, but it's kind of distant, and you're like bringing it in or something, metaphorically.
Yeah.
How do you Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go.
Well, how do you sleep? Do you sleep well at night?
I do. I do. Lately, it seems that I'll wake up sometime in the early morning. It could be 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, somewhere in there, and I'm up, and part of me feels like I want to go back to sleep, but then part of me is awake, and so that's when I'll do something. I'll have some part of the practice to do, and then I'll go back to sleep.
Okay.
So it's being up for maybe an hour,
okay,
or so, give or take a half an hour, and then it's like I can sleep till 7:30, 8 o'clock. I can sleep as long as I want to at that point, But in that little waking period is and I don't set a mental alarm clock for it or anything. It just happens. And so it was interesting this morning. I came upon that time in the morning where I woke up and I was just having this interesting dream of explaining something to someone, and I just had to get up and write it all down. I'm going, this is cool. I do not want to forget this. And it's about creating form and using information as the blueprint for the form that you create as you in the life. And so it's like we all get information, and we get it. Some of it we get from inside, most of it we get from outside, but we buy into it, and then we end up creating our lives according to the blueprint of that information. And that's why everybody thinks their information is objectively true, because they can see see it manifesting in their lives. And they said, this cannot be made up because I'm living it, without realizing that you live whatever you make up. And so it'll be grist for a lot of sessions to come, just yoga sessions, meditation, sound, whatever. But the meanings of different words are having a deeper connotation.
We're all like, we could just be ones and zeros in a computer database. I don't know what sometimes I don't know what's real anymore. And I know what my job entails, and my wife and the people around me. But when it comes to watching stuff on the TV, the news and politics and world affairs, it's like, it's almost like entertainment, because I can't really have any effect on it. So I watch it, but I'm just like, is this a show? Are you guys like putting on a show? Is this all choreographed? I don't believe anything you guys are saying to me anymore. And I get my information from within and without, obviously. But if it doesn't resonate, the stuff that's coming from external sources, I'm just like, this is some bullshit. And I'm not. Just because you say it doesn't mean that it's real. If it's not like striking as truth with me, I discard it, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people make a living by just saying the same things over and over again until people think they're true.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that in my life. And that was part of the yoga experience and all of that. I mean, it's like yoga, I think it was designed by the yogis to get you to that space where you do go inside and you're controlled by what resonates within your heart as your soul, right? And everything else is just like, well, you choose to believe it or you choose not to believe it. But is still a fabrication, right?
Yeah, until you're convinced otherwise. I get, or, you know, and sometimes I'll hear something and I'm like, that doesn't sound right, but it would be from my wife, who is like very adamant that this is a reality. Like, we have this Christian church in our town that is trying to take over the town with Christian values, which you would think, like, that's not so bad, right? But they're using the Christian values as a front to sort of take over the town financially and like run the government, run the businesses. And the more I talk to other people, it seems to be like that's the case. And because it's called Christian nationalism, there's this thing. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, but I like my country, and I was raised a Catholic, which to me is basically Christian. And so I'm like, you're talking bad about Christians and people that are patriots, but this is like a whole different, it's like words are weird, you know, they have different meanings in different circumstances. So I had to wrap my mind around that this isn't, she's not attacking Christians, because everyone we know was raised Christian in some varying level, you know, kind of, for the most part. So to rewire my brain to think, like, be like, okay, these Christians are actually bad because they're telling you they're going to cure you and relieve you of your sins if you give them a certain amount of money, and you know, that's a false kind of most likely false statement.
Yeah.
And then also, I mean, I was thinking, because you came up in this era where Osho was a, you know, like alive. I don't know if he's alive still. I don't think he is, but he might be. And I'm watching Wild Wild Country, that documentary, and there's all these people there to see him talk, and I'm like, what are they getting out of that? Did you ever go to any of those or talk to anyone that did, or any experiences like that?
No, well, I watched the film, and you know, the Kundalini practice that I learned from and followed for so long was not that dissimilar. You know, it's about you know, having a group of people that become followers who aren't happy with where they are, and then somebody tells them something that resonates with them, and so they buy into that, and then the process of buying into that, they buy into a lot of other stuff, and then end up, and not that there's anything wrong necessarily that's being taught, but soon after that ball gets rolling, the institution becomes more important than the practice, or than the technology of, let's say, of the yoga and what he was saying. You know, I mean, it's like, yeah, at the beginning, the free love and the sex and when I read his books, his, you know, like Finger Pointing to the Moon and all of this, you go, yeah, this is just so yogically clean.
Nice.
And it's the same thing what I would be teaching in yoga, or teaching people how to become teachers and all of that, and then realize that, no, wait a minute, when I look at it now, I see the institution as the guide rather than the inner voice being the guide. And plus, you know, we're in another shift of dimensions now. You don't need the same kind of practice now that you did in 1970 or 1980 or even 1990. You know, it's like, no, the game has changed. You know, they've taken those marbles off and they've put these marbles in, and so that's, at least that's been my experience. And now it's like, okay, well, everybody, they have their teacher sitting right here.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I would think, like, you don't need someone else to to help you reach God, I guess, although I have a guru, I guess you would call him. He just taught me how to do my meditation, and I've gone back to him once. After a year, I went back and got a refreshment, because he told me my mantra, which if you go to Transcendental Meditation, they'll tell you your mantra. And then this was back in 2022 when I initially went, I think it's like January. And I was like, yeah, I don't really like that mantra. So I made up my own mantra, and I was doing that for about a year. And I was like, something's not quite right. I'm not really getting out of this what I want. So I went back and told him that I wasn't saying the mantra. And he was like, you need to do the mantra we told you, basically, which I started doing again. And since I've been doing that, I have been getting to that space. But the reason I stopped actually is because I was getting this headache. It was this weird, like, stress headache. And I was like, I don't like that, obviously. And so I was thinking like Shangri-La. That was kind of the one I made up. Because it needs to be something that doesn't have a physical form or a thought associated with it, like pencil is the example Maharishi gives. And if you just say pencil, pencil, pencil over and over again, eventually you'll just that repetitive mantra. It's singular, like it focuses your thoughts to one sound, so all other thoughts fade away, and then slowly you start slowing down the mantra, because in between there's like a nothingness, and that's where the peace is, because the thoughts are what cause all this stress. And then thoughts, and we're getting so much more information. Like that's what I think maybe you were getting at, where like the game has changed, because in the 70s and 80s, you had television, but now we're on the information highway, like constant, nonstop new data. And I don't know if we're built for that. At least over the last thousands of years, we did not have this much information coming to us. So I think we need meditation more than ever to just bring us back down to a baseline or something.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. It's a critical piece. What you're talking about is all the information and the intensity of it and the consistency of it, moment after moment. I hear people talking about, becoming, feeling numb in the presence of it, and having a feeling of powerlessness in relation to it. And that just sets things up so that something like really horrendous could be imposed on the environment. And we've been so dulled and so taken out of what is human reality that we just go, oh yeah, it's just another day in paradise. It's just another day in dystopia or whatever.
Yeah.
And whereas, 20 years ago, we would have just been totally alarmed that people were even thinking about doing this. And where now we're just going, well, of course, that's a natural progression of things.
It's like leading the lambs to the slaughter or something. And we're just
something like that.
Yeah. And I was in the Army. I did a couple of tours in Iraq during the second war, and I know what I thought I believed when I went into it, and then coming out of it, my whole belief system had changed for as far as our intentions for why we were going into that war. And so now it's like, if they say something, it's the opposite. Yeah. Or they're trying to divert your attention, and it has nothing to do with like trans issues, abortion rights, or this or that. That's like a way to divide us so that they can keep pulling money out, out the side door. And it's just like, some people believe it. We have our teams. I'm team red, you're team blue, and I don't like you or something.
Yeah. And you need to either change or leave.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the case with
the way it is right now. Like, it's not, to me, and this is whatever, there's no racial issues, it's thought issues. Like, I don't care what you look like, but I care how you think. And if you think or are not thinking, and maybe I'm the one that's wrong, there's always that possibility. So, but I want you to confirm that I'm not crazy, because there's two sides of every issue, and I just feel like there's actually a lot, like, both sides can be right at the same time, and there's just like these little tiny differences that we're fighting about, and it's like, it's kind of stressful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like Marshall Rosenberg came up with an alternative to that. He developed nonviolent communication, right? And so he said two things check into: one, what's alive within all of us, and two, how can we make another person's day a little bit better?
I like that.
And so if we focus on that primarily, and then a lot of the differences will just kind of evaporate or become unimportant. But that which is alive within all of us is, that's why people that meditate, people that do yoga, people that are in the salesman's club, they're in the salesman's club to feel that which is alive inside, and that's what brings the unity, and what allows each person to find the experience in front of them, the circumstance in front of them, and figure out a way just to make it a little bit better, because that's the momentum of that which is alive inside of us. That says, okay, we know if we look at it, the things that we do either individually or as a group that allow us to excel, meet a challenge and experience excelling over it, that's what gives us the most satisfaction out of anything we do in a day.
Just getting to that, like, feeling alive.
Mm-hmm.
What do you so you meditate, kind of like, but do you do some kind of asana or yoga practice before to loosen up the body or whatever before you meditate, or do you just do you meditate and then do yoga, or what's your practice?
When I do the session, there's some kind of movement.
Mm-hmm.
And my own personal practice, my asana is finding my heartbeat.
Nice. Yeah.
Right. Because if within touching my fingertips or letting my hands totally relax, I can find my pulse, or if I can even just rub my hands together, and then I'll feel the pulse, and then I'll feel the magnetic electricity between them. I'll go, okay, that's it. That's life. That, to me, that's the key. Follow the heartbeat, the pulse back to the heartbeat to the soul to that which is alive, right? And it's the same thing with finding the electromagnetic field, because those vibrating particles of light, those vibrating electrons, contain universal mind that holds everything as consciousness within consciousness, and operating and balanced, right? The whole thing, the scary thing about atomic warfare is that balance gets disrupted and particles just fly apart. And science thinks, or certain people think, that I can control that. I can control how much is going to become disintegrated. Well, they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know.
the entire atmosphere could catch on fire or something. But
yeah, so far we've managed to stay within critical limits, but we don't know where the tipping point is.
Well, so and that singularity, if you will, I like the following it back to the heartbeat, and then to the soul, and then to the universal connection of everything. It's a very personal experience, obviously, but there's group meditations, and a lot of people will do psychedelics in a group, and I'm like, that's a very personal thing that I don't necessarily need anyone else to be around. At least I don't think so. In fact, I don't want anyone around for the most part. But why do people do it in groups? And like, what's the benefit of that?
If you're using it for personal growth, then the factors that you're thinking of and that are red flags to you come into play. But if you're approaching it from a collective creative energy, like it will take excuse me,
no problem,
it'll take a certain amount of people coming to the creative impulse of peace or love or ecology or sustainability to shift the whole planet. I mean, who knows how many it is? We don't know. We're still playing with that. But the more people you get together that consolidate an intention, the more power it holds. And then it's like it becomes a formation of,
vibration.
It becomes the format of what is, just like the information that I subscribe to, endorse, and believe create my form. So as we get together collectively to create that form, then it begins to, that's the reality. And
I feel like it changes the vibration. Maybe the intention is to change the vibration of the world to a vibration of peace, whereas the news and certain politicians maybe are trying to disrupt that vibration so that we can't find ourselves and our true peace within, which is, it's all like, why don't you want us to be peaceful? They just want us to be like, go to work, pay your taxes, and, maybe hopefully get sick and have to take a pill that we can also supply you with, and you can pay us for that. And so, there's no profit in world peace.
Right. Yeah. But that's what's funny, it's like I can look at what's going on in the world, what comes across in the media, and going, the more ridiculous and the more horror that comes through that messaging just indicates how close we are to coming as individuals to creating that life of peace. You know what I mean? It's like it has to intensify to keep that growing sense of unity and peace between, let's say, you and me. There might be a third person that says, well, let's keep these guys off balance because then they'll give us more money and more attention. And so they have to upgrade the level of horror to keep us off balance. It's like those samurai masters, they are so connected and so stable. It takes a couple of three people, to even make a significant impact on their steadiness. Those guys are, they're masters of the because you have the physical and the mental and the spiritual. And I was listening to something, and it was like Aristotle or Plato, and they would wrestle essentially to get into a state of flow, the flow state, the now, and then go from the physical wrestling, and then that's when they would do their philosophizing, because I feel you've awakened all, like the body and the chakras and the mind, and I find that to be pretty interesting. Because I've been doing that myself with
I train in jiu-jitsu and boxing, and that if you're ever in a rut and you are feeling just like out of flow, that can get you right back into that flow state. And so I've been doing that. You got to be careful, because then if you get hurt, that throws everything off. But just the whole balance of everything, the mind, body, spirit, it always is kind of out of balance. It keeps like getting out of balance. So I got to bring it back into balance, and then out again. And then it's like this constant battle. And so that's why we do these things, I guess, Yeah. Yeah. Cause we're feeling potentially like this dis-ease within. So we focus, bring ourselves back into harmony, and then go about our day, and then it somehow or another gets disrupted. So you do it all again tomorrow. But you build, I think over time, you're building like a foundation of peace, I would hope, that will that lasts a while. One thing I heard in your podcast with Matt was, and maybe this, I don't know if he was saying it or you were saying it, but like for every hour you meditate, you have like 10 hours that it kind of follows you after the meditation of some level of peace within.
Yeah. And that's what you were saying too. That's why you meditate twice a day.
Right. It works.
It does work. And it is, it's kind of like, it takes that meditation to get to the crest of the wave. You get to the other side, and you just get to surf it for a while, the more mastery you bring to that practice, whatever it is, whether it's meditation or asana or jiu-jitsu, you get there quicker, and you can sustain it longer. It's just it seems to be a matter of reducing the resistance to that sense of peace, that sense of surrender. And I think that with meditation, that's what it is. It's a surrendering of the mind. And it's like, it's tricky because the mind, we've given it a life of its own, where it will say, no, this is the program. Don't you remember? Right. And then, as identity, we go, oh yeah, well, how could I have forgotten that? Right. But as we surrender, the mind taking control over us and just going, okay, I'm just going to find my pulse, and I'm going to follow my heartbeat back to who I really am, beyond my definition and beyond time and beyond this mind. I can get there quicker and make it last longer.
Right. It's the surrendering, because the ego wants to keep going and keep thinking and keep control of the situation, and you have to somehow shut it down. But that's where all the suffering comes from, is the ego and the thoughts and the comparison between you and, whoever else might be ahead of you in life, in your mind. Like, oh, that guy's doing better. I suck. I'm a loser.
Yeah.
But we're all doing good. We're all on our path. We're all doing the best we can. And yeah. I'm grateful that I found this meditative practice to help me stay sane, because I run a company. I think you have your hand in a company or a couple, and it's a constant requirement to stay on top of things. And every time you click that last email, 10 more come in, and people wanting things from you constantly. I'm bad. I need to learn to say no. I was just talking to Matt before we got on here, and have this new deal with the UFC, and it's a big opportunity for us to grow as a company and reach a worldwide platform. But with that new awareness of SHEATH and the company, now people are coming in out of the woodworks like, we got an opportunity for you to grow even more. And it puts this pressure. And so it's like a constant stress. So I'm just so grateful. And even when I'm doing my meditation, sometimes when I'm sinking into it, I'm like, thank you for this moment. At least I have this moment of bliss, and then I'll get back out into the trenches and go to battle. But I need these little breaks. I was talking to my mom recently. She was in town, and she's like, you need more than 20 minutes a day. And I do it twice a day, but because we don't take vacations. I mean, it's like every day for years at this point. Although I did just take a vacation for the first time in 5 years. I went to Puerto Vallarta with my wife, and for the most part, we just sat on the beach and drank wine and ate good food. And then it was hard to sink into that. It was kind of weird because we were like, no, we need to be working, and to let go, to surrender was then by the time we left, we're like, we don't want to leave.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah, it was good. So, I mean, in terms of surrendering, I think that also really struck a chord with me. I think you mentioned that in the Zen Archive podcast. And so at what point does that come to play? I mean, like, when do you need to surrender, and how does that work? Like during your practice?
Well, when the resistance and the effort, become not only noticeable but uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And it's funny that that'll come more strongly within the practice, because in the everyday life, and it gets me mostly when I'm driving. It's like that is actually either life and death or life and maiming. Uh-huh. Whether things turn out well or not, and so it's easy for me to react and just go beyond my usual bounds of propriety. And so, but the practice is a space where, okay, we'll just notice, and then we'll just set little bookmarks. It's like if I'm doing my practice and I decide to take a deep breath, I'll notice that deep breath, and then I'll give permission for that breath to come at the appropriate time within my active life to remind me, oh, there's a breath. It's not, I mean, you don't breathe like that normally you just breathe enough to stay alive. Mm-hmm. But within pranayama or within your meditation, it's like that, and that's even too long, because that breath comes more like, and it's not because I'm sucking it in, it's just because I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know the mechanics of it in the everyday life, but I know the feeling of it that I can trigger myself, so that it can come and remind me to, all right, wait, maybe surrender is the key here. Maybe not assuming I know what that other person has malintent. Maybe they're just out of sorts and in a hurry, and that's how they drive. Mm-hmm. And they go, oh shit, yeah. And then I realize that when I find myself driving the same way and making a similar decision, but my decision is a good one.
Yeah. When I'm driving, I tip, like these days, I'm rarely in a hurry, but every now and then I am. But so when I'm not, and I see someone in that state, and I know I'm like, they're late for something, just let them go. I've been there. I've done that. I've had to go on, not the outside the lines, but like where you might turn off to exit, but you don't really exit. You get back in at the, right before the exit and cut a bunch of people off, which, rarely I do that anymore. But I definitely, when I was younger, I was always in a hurry.
Yeah.
So, but that's one thing that came up was breathing and how situations can affect our breathing when we're stressed. And sometimes when you're in the stress, you don't know you're like breathing just changed and you're shallow breathing or, not breathing properly. Do you do breath work with people? I'm assuming you do to an extent.
Yeah, a lot. It's my teaching methodology has shifted from like the really intense physical kriyas to shorter and less, like my favorite ones are 3 exercises for 3 minutes each, and you just go and you take a little time between the 3 exercises, but it's very simple, and most of them, it's some movement, and some of it is an intense movement, but it's very controlled and breath associated with it, and then you just get into a pranayama or pranayama meditation, or just a pure mental meditation where you just watch your body and let yourself get into a more relaxed and allowing space, so that without surrendering like I give up, you just find yourself automatically surrendering and just going, okay, yeah, this is what I was looking for. And to me, that's the beauty now of teaching is just reminding someone that they can be what they want to be, and that they are in themselves, in the moment, complete. It just doesn't look like it because we don't believe it. And what the direction that I'm following now is that we attract into our lives that which we expect, which comes from what we believe, right? I suspect and I believe that people are out to get me. And so when I expect that, that's when they come. And so if I expect an integrated and powerful connection with life itself, as the source of everything that is, well, then that's what will come.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
And it has to be believable. Like you have to believe it. So I think these little incremental growths towards that connection, and then maybe eventually you have the ultimate connection, Christ consciousness. Or if you are stressed, and a couple things. So you're a teacher. Do you find yourself learning as you're teaching new kind of concepts?
Yeah, for sure. It's like probably the most significant information comes when I am out of balance and I find myself, oh my God, especially if something happens while I'm on the way driving to the class and I arrive at the class and I am just totally in disarray, then it's like, geez, all we can do now is take a deep breath, go in there, tune in and see what comes. And it's just amazing. I'm not sure the exact dynamic that what I need is the same that everyone else that comes needs, and this is what's coming up is I'll say one thing, let's say that I need, but someone else, any number of people there can hear something entirely different. It's like, so I was doing one class and talking about something, and then one of the people was talking to someone else in the class, not even that day, but maybe a week or 2 or days later, and they go, do you remember when Siri Bahadur said that it was okay, to love anybody you wanted? And the person goes, "What, really?" And then they told me, and I went, "I don't think I've ever said that." So it's hard to say. Do people hear what you're saying, or do
They hear what they want to hear or need to hear?
What we want to hear, yeah. Or what we need, yeah. And so that's how the teaching goes for me. It's like I'm always learning, and that's why I keep going back. If I had to teach the same thing over and over again and just teach out of a book, I would have quit a long time ago.
Right.
I would have gone
bored.
Buy the book.
Yeah, that's no fun. I would get bored also. I like new, fresh learning, getting deeper into the the onion. You want to get down to the center of that Tootsie Pop and find the answer that's gonna last, because we find these glimpses of peace and understanding, and then the next day you slip right back into your old routines. And I had it in my hands. It just slipped.
Right. The other thing that really comes out is the sense of humor of divine intelligence, and even of spirit guides. It's like I'll try and just totally let go and wait and see what comes, and say what comes. And after I've said it, I just go, "Oh my God, that is so funny." It's like all the people in, I don't know about all the people, I'm assuming, but like the cosmos, if it doesn't have a sense of humor, I'm missing the boat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the divine it does stand up.
I love it. I love stand up too. And there's so many. I want to talk for maybe as long as I can, probably 10 more minutes. Everything is like a sine wave. I feel like there's all, it's vibrations, it's waves. And every time I'm at the peak, when I know, I'm feeling really good, it's like, I'll try to enjoy it for a few minutes, but I know that it's not going to stay too long. So don't get too excited. But also when I'm at the valley, if I remember, because sometimes you forget, it's gonna get better again. And so it's just like this ride, you're surfing the wave of life. And so these practices help keep balance and perspective. And so as a teacher, if someone was losing it and just in complete disarray, how would you maybe try to bring them back? And I'm assuming it's like a breath exercise. Could you give an example of a breath exercise?
Well, yeah, and this happens. This happens a lot, within gong sessions. Because the gong's very powerful. It has a powerful effect on the body and the mind. And if you're totally, or if you're majority of the time you're relating to mind, when you get into that gong space, you're going to lose that contact. And so the idea is just to use the breath. You notice where the discomfort is, and you breathe into it and allow the prana that you bring in when you breathe to come to that space and saturate the physical, the electromagnetic, and the spiritual structure of that space. Exhale and let it go, let it release. It's like the latest thing learning about prana and breathing is that we think that we need the air around us to feed us and keep us alive. And yeah, we need oxygen. We need to turn over the chemistry of the blood, old stuff out and new stuff in. But what I'm playing with now is that prana coming from the other side of the atomic structure. Like if I think of myself as Siri Bahadur, it's just like this chunk of flesh that integrates all these systems and all of the parts of me into projecting who I believe I am. But when I go down to the organ systems, to the muscle, to the bone, to the fiber, the cellular structure, and then beneath the cellular structure to the atomic structure of the cells, and then beyond the atomic structure to the subatomic structure, so that we get into this quantum orientation, the prana comes, and the yogis will say, prana, life force, comes from beyond the beyond. And so beyond the beyond is on the other side of the atomic structure. And there could be more steps in between than just subatomic structure. I'm not going to claim to know that, but that prana is always flowing in and nurturing, feeding, bringing information. And then the apana, the used energy, flows out, and either it will get trapped in the structure because we're holding on to it because it's our identity, or we recycle it back into beyond the beyond, and so that divine life can absorb that experience or the results of the experience. So my stressors can come in due to my information, alignment, and beliefs, and then they're meant to go back out again, to be resolved, dissolved, understood, blessed, and move out. And so the idea of people getting lost is just trying to hold on to too much at one time. Hold on to that thought that says, if I don't pay my rent, I'm going to die.
Yeah,
right?
Catastrophizing, yeah.
And there's a bunch of people out there that are not paying rent that are not dead yet. It's not a good life necessarily, but you're not going to die. And the idea is, okay, can I use the prana that flows freely through me if I'll just let the apana go, let the you stuff go, and see what happens? And the universal mind of divine intelligence is not punishing people, is not saying, well, you fucked up, and so therefore you get this horrible life. It's no, what do I believe? What do I attract? And if I don't like what I'm experiencing now, how am I going to change the information that I endorse? It's like when I say something, it's like an endorsement of the frequency of that word. That word has a frequency, and that frequency is an experience. And so when I keep thinking it and I keep saying it, I'm telling the cosmos, I want that, I want that, I want that. When in reality, all I want is a little peace and quiet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, so, okay, there's so many directions, but I feel like writing stuff down makes things happen faster. Like you're saying, speaking it into existence, I want that. But like if you write it down, it's like another level of making it concrete. It's visible, it's tangible to an extent. And it's like us writing a spell. People have said that, which I thought that was very interesting. And I find that to be true. I've been using the law of attraction for the last 20 years or so. And, I make vision boards, I visualize, I write the things down and speak it out loud. And it seems there's definitely a level of magic in this life. So I mean, might as well play with it, I guess, and figure it out. We're here for a limited time. So learning what works and doesn't work. And I mean, I don't know about the afterlife and what's going to happen. Although when I did leave my body that one time, it gave me a sense of peace in terms of dying, because I felt like the soul could exist outside of the body, which was an interesting experience, that kind of like a life or death experience. But back to the breathing and Ohana, what did you call it? Apana. So how do you use your breath? Is it just like a exhale, get it out of there?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. As you let go of the breath, you have the intention of also letting go of the condition. And the condition can either ride out of you as an environment on the breath, or you can just let it transmute, through the physical system into the atomic system, and then release that way. But yeah, it's like when you write something down, you're bringing it into a physical manifestation. You're thinking about it while you're writing it, and if you're feeling it while you're writing you're just, and that's the and that's the way to make things accelerate, is feeling them at the same time, at least as you think.
Mm-hmm.
Now the difference between let's say what Christ taught, as far as, let's say, the kingdom of heaven, or release from cares and worries and diseases, is that the what do you call it, the law of attraction. Instead of attracting things, he's saying attract divine, attract infinity. And as you attract infinity, you begin to, there's no language of infinity, which is the trick, right? We the closest we can come are these sacred sounds that we call mantras, which are kind of like, you say pencil, but there's not even an image of a pencil. You say om, right? Om is the formless one. Ong is the formless becoming form. And so when you get into that, you're saying, okay, let divine life become real for me, as me. And that's when you get to the ultimate surrender that says, okay, I can let go of everything I want and everything I thought I was, which is scary. It's a scary proposition, to go, I'm going to let go of my mind. Because you let go of your mind and you come back into this reality, they're going to put you away. Right?
There is some rules that you have to stay within the boundaries.
Yeah. But the freedom comes from being able to stay here and be beyond the boundaries, but know what's not right to do.
Yeah. Balance. Well, and then, so you're speaking words into what you want, maybe like a prayer. And I love I forgot to mention, like, so you visualize what you want to have happen. I just got that $1 million deposited into my account, or whatever, and you feel what it would feel like for that moment to have it, and the like exuberance that would be naturally experienced, or whatever that, $1 million, love of your life experience, whatever you want. And I remember doing that, and I would just play the game. I mean, it's just like just toy around with these ideas and see if it works for you. It seemed to have worked for me. We're relatively successful as an organization, in a business, and in life. I have everything I need. But it all could also just be a coincidence. And I did work hard, over the years. It's like that obsession. So, there was a level of obsession that came from me visualizing these things and then focusing on them for years, decades at this point, to manifest that. Napoleon Hill says, he talks about a burning desire, but also you have to be willing to work for 20 years without pay. And if you have that level of dedication, then you'll reach your end, goal. But people are like, 20 years, I don't want to do that. So yeah. And it might happen faster, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's your mission, and the most successful missions are the ones that there's a purpose behind it. And the purer the purpose, the greater your chances of success, or lasting success. It's like you could say, you could get $1 million next week, and then you get the $1 million, and then you realize, oh, it wasn't the $1 million that I wanted.
Right. And a lot of people win the lottery and then their lives go to trash and they lose all the money and then they're worse off than they were before. So you want that real sort of sustainable growth, and what comes up must come down maybe. But if you have a nice trajectory, you can sustain these things. Coming up on time, but two more things from my personal experience. When I said I went to Puerto Vallarta, I did stem cells, which it was an interesting experience to, we're trying to find that fountain of youth, like we were talking about at the beginning. And I've been wanting to do it for like 10 years, 5 years. So I did that, manifested that. And I don't know why I did that. It happened. And I did hyperbaric chamber, which is like a pressurized oxygen. Have you ever done that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I found that to be quite healing, and I was meditating in the process while I was in there. But I'm like thinking, as you were talking earlier, like, what if you did these breathing exercises in a hyperbaric chamber? Would you get even more results? I don't know.
I did pranayama in a hyperbaric chamber, and it was like really easy.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a 1 minute breath, no problem. It's just there. And but we don't live in one.
Yeah.
So when you get out, you have to, okay, well, what now?
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, like with whatever therapies are going on, because I've done this and that before, and the idea is even if you reach a certain desired plateau within that therapy, can you maintain it? And the chances of maintaining it increase as you shift your expectations in your inner form. If you keep the same form and the same expectations, whatever you gained within that therapy, you're back where you started from, or maybe a little better, maybe a little worse. It doesn't matter. But it's like it's all happening. I'm pointing to to my head, and my brain, but it's happening within my individual mental connection with universal mental connection. Okay, can I say, okay, what do you want to do today? If I'm talking to life, I say, what do you want to do? What do we want to do together? Because for the yogi, life moves through us as us, and it's just our beliefs that shift the focus. I like what you were saying about the sine wave. The problem is sometimes you get at the bottom, you don't even realize there's the top. You're so far down in the valley that you just go, I don't even know where I am anymore. I give up.
Yeah.
Right. And if you really give up, then you climb up a little bit higher than you were before. But
yeah. You just need, it's hard to remember that, oh yeah, I'm going to come out of this. When you're so deep, you think it's never going to end. My life is over and everything's ruined or whatever. But we come out of it, and ultimately everything's going to be okay. So I think if we can just be at peace with the turmoil, and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would love to talk to you a lot more, because so many questions were coming up during the conversation. So hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah, for sure.
I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you guys out there got a little something from our guest today. And you can listen to him on the Zen Archive. That was a great episode. And if they wanted to, are you in Austin?
Yeah, in Bastrop, just outside of Austin.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if people want to get, in touch with you, or maybe learn more from you, where would they go to find that out? www.siribahadur.com. Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Siri
First and
Bahadur.
last name.
We'll put that in the show notes. And this was more for me. I don't have like a grand audience, although I love every one of you that does watch. But ultimately, this is my own little personal indulgence. So thank you for taking the time. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and may they only get better from here.
Oh, indeed. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
A pleasure. All right.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
And see you next time.